I've translated as the great five gross elements, ego, understanding, as also the unmanifest, the 10 senses and the mind, and the 5 objects of the senses. So finally we may be wondering, what is the kshetra? What is this field? So there are 5 gross elements. These are the ego, the intellect, the unmanifest, the 10 senses, the 1 mind, and the 5 objects of senses. One of these are the spices because of which this doll of clay is dancing. Commentators of the Gita have interpreted avyakt, which is defined as unmanifest, in so many different ways. There is something in there that is avyakt, which is unmanifest, or avyakrut maya, unmanifest illusion. There are also other things in the field which are described in the 6th verse, and we will look at these later. So first of all, God has said that there are 5 gross elements. So what are these 5 gross elements? They are earth, water, fire, wind, and ether. These are the key 5 gross elements. If we wish to understand the 5 gross elements spiritually, and we wish to go deeper into Gyan, which is wisdom, and the scriptures have created two categories of the 5 gross elements. And these 2 categories are Panchkirt, which are mixed gross elements, and Apanchkirt, which are pure gross elements. Those who read the scriptures of the Vedanta will have seen these words before. The Panchkirt are earth, water, fire, wind, and ether. So what happened in these is that half the substance of earth remained in pure substance, and half of the substance of the earth was given to the other 4 gross elements. Therefore, half of the earth remained in pure substance, and the other half of the earth went into water, fire, wind, and ether. In the same way, half of the substance of water remained in pure form, and the other half was given to the remaining 3 gross elements. In the same way, half of the substance of fire remained in pure form, and the other half was given to 2 remaining elements, which were gross. And that which remained in pure substance was the pure gross elements. And that which was given away was the mixed gross elements. Panchkirt is defined as that which went into 5 because of the word panch. The body and prakriti was all created from the mixed gross element, and the apanchkirt, which is the pure gross elements, is what Sri Krishna is talking about in this verse. And these are 5. Then comes the ego, the intellect, and the unmanifest. And we will go through each and every one of these. The reason the body was created out of the 5 great gross elements is the ego. The reason for the ego is the intellect. And the reason for the intellect is the unmanifest, which is prakriti, nature, or maya. Then there are the 10 senses. These are the 5 senses of knowledge and the 5 senses of action. Guruji makes these clear because you often hear these terms, the 5 senses of knowledge and the 5 senses of action during discourses. But what are these 5 senses of knowledge? The 5 senses of knowledge are the ears, the skin, the eyes, the tongue, and the nose. These are the 5 senses of knowledge from which we attain knowledge. These are our senses of perception. These perceive the world. And the senses of actions are those from which one can perform work. And these are speech, the hands, the feet, the reproductive organs, and the excremental organs. These are the 5 senses of action. So we must try to understand these. Out of these, the speech is very important. God has given us 2 hands, but only 1 task. God has given us 2 eyes, but 1 task, which is to see. He's given us 2 ears, but only again 1 task, which is to hear. He has given us 2 sets of teeth, but only 1 task, to chew. And this is the case with all of these. But God has given us 1 time, but 2 tasks have been given, both to taste and to speak. These are the tasks that God has given us. Now we must consider how much control we should exercise over the use of the tongue and the speech. If it goes in the wrong direction a little, then this will lead to difficulties. The tongue is the only thing in the entire body which doesn't have a bone. Otherwise, even if it is the smallest of all organs, then it will have a bone, but there is actually no bone in the tongue. It is so strong that if it goes in the wrong direction, then it will get all the bones broken. By this we mean if we say the wrong thing, we can offend. The reproductive organ is also one sense organ with 2 tasks. It's a sex organ and we use to urinate. The sense organ is 1 and the number of tasks is 2. The tongue and the reproductive organ are sense organs that need to be looked after. For a long time, Guruji was thinking about something, as he heard the bhajan of Narsi Mehta, which is known as Vaishnav Janta. And you may have also heard it, and it goes as follows. Vach kach mana nishchal rakhe, dhan dhan janani te mire. One who keeps himself steadfast in words, body and mind, blessed is the mother who gives birth to such a child. The word gach, which is body, is used. And when a lot of people hear this, they've turned the word gach, body, into gaj, which is actions. It is not actions, but actually gach. And it was in the bhajan which Guruji couldn't understand when he was young. Vach actually means the speech, which one should keep steadfast, and the word gach has come from the word gachota, which means a string, which one ties around themselves, and this would control the reproductive organ. This is what Narsi Mehta shows. Therefore, one who is God's own is one who always controls his speech and his reproductive organ. This is because you'll be able to control the other sense organs, but control of the speech and the reproductive organ is extremely difficult. All the wrong things that happened in the material life are because of these two. If Draupadi had kept her speech under a little control and perhaps had not said, "The son of a blind man must also be blind," then perhaps the war in the Mahabharata may not have been fought. These are the senses. Then there is the mind and the 5 objects of the senses, which are words, touch, appearance, taste, and smell. When all the things described in this verse are put together, then how many does that equal to? Has anyone counted this? Now, lawyers are notoriously bad at maths, so I have not done this. But if you look at your book, then you will get it wrong. Because if you look at the books, then there are 31 of them. There are in fact 24 of them. The 5 great gross elements, the ego, the intellect, the unmanifest, these 10 senses, the mind and the 5 objects of the senses. We should pray to the Supreme Soul that we are able to keep 24 of these under control. Now, if the Supreme Soul showers his grace upon all of us, then the 24 of them will remain under our hold. Guruji also says that Paramatma himself is 24. So if you keep all 24 of these under control, then the Supreme Soul is also 24. Those who are interested in mathematics and counting will know that when you write the word Paramatma, Supreme Soul, in Gujarati, then it adds up to 24. Pa means 5, Ra means 2, and if you change Ma, then it will be 4.5 in the old mathematics. The Ma has half a Ta, which is equal to 8, and Ma means 4.5. Jay, I hope you're doing the maths. All of these equal 24. In the same way that the Kshetra was made out of 24 substances, this is the same way in which the Paramatma, the Supreme Soul, is 24. We therefore pray to God that each and every one of these are kept under control. If we get the Lord's grace, then we are able to keep them under control. And again, I state that the Paramatma is 24. Therefore, the reason for the 5 great gross elements is the ego, the reason for the ego is the intellect, and the reason for the intellect is the avyakta, which is unmanifest. Therefore, what is the ego? The feeling of me is the ego. What does the ego then do? First of all, the ego keeps the individual power steadily. That's the work of the ego. Secondly, the sense of being different from another person or another object is felt. So when people use the words you or I, then what have they done? They've created a difference. That's actually defined by the ego. And it is so that the ego can go away that our rishis gave the word ame, which in Gujarati means we. And he said the word, and the rishis gave the word ame for yagna, because in ame, both you and I come into it together. Because of the me of the ego, a separation is created. The third point, Shankaracharya ji said, the ego is the cause of the 5 great gross elements, and it is marked by the sense of I. This is the ego. The next point is about the intellect. The intellect is the power to perceive knowledge, and the intellect has 2 main works. Firstly, it collects information, and then it analyzes that information. This is the first work of the intellect. The mind collects information and looks after it and stores it, but the intellect analyzes it. And the second important work of the intellect is that it has the capacity to solve problems. Our scriptures don't define a person who is intellectual by the number of books that he's read or the amount of degrees he has. That's not defined as an intellectual person. An intellectual person has 2 things. Firstly, he can do intellectual analysis, and the second is that he can solve problems. A person may be extremely educated, but as soon as a small problem comes along, he'll put his hand on his head and he'll begin to cry and say, "Oh dear." But our scriptures say that such a person is not an intellectual person. No matter if a person has an education, if he can solve problems, then he is defined as a true intellectual. And this is one faculty of the intellect, our problem-solving capacity. A human being is an intellectual animal because whichever problems human beings have, they have adjusted to them, and human beings have solved them. That's why you'll see on the earth that animals can only live in certain habitats. For example, lions and tigers need certain types of jungles and certain types of climates. Lions and tigers are only in certain types of jungles and certain types of climates. In the Girnar jungle in India, you'll find many such lions and tigers. In Africa, you'll also find such lions. But if you go to Alaska and you ask them to show you a lion, they will think you're crazy. If you take a lion there, then the lion would die there. The lion would not be able to last. But why is this? Instead, if you take a person in India, you can take that person to India and you can also take them to Alaska. Why is this? Because the atmosphere has changed around him and there's an endless amount of coldness. But the lion would not be able to adjust to it because the lion doesn't have the intellect which tells him to wear a sweater and to wear something of wool which will make him last. But a human being would be able to do this. The human being has this intellectual capacity to recognize the cold and to be able to adjust to it. Guruji makes a joke that a Patel can go anywhere. He may even go to Alaska to start a motel. Won't he feel cold? Yes, he might. But he is intelligent and he will be able to do anything. Then this is the power of human beings, their problem-solving capacity. And that is called the intellect. All the problems of life are going to come, and the intellect will solve it. And this is the work of our intellect. Shankaracharya Ji says, the cause of the ego is the intellect whose characteristic is determination. This is the third work of the intellect, determination. The intellect makes a decision and makes a resolve. He is resolute. Therefore, only he who is intelligent, in the true meaning of the word intelligent, can be resolute. So if you were to say it in other words, then if one's resolve does not last, then consider that that person is not as intelligent. A person whose resolve lasts is intelligent. This is very important in January when we're all trying to keep to our resolutions. God has placed these three faculties of the intellect in this toy. If we think of the bhajan, there's a famous bhajan which goes, Rakna Ramakra, Mara Rame Ramta Rakyare. This is translated as, the toys of ashes were placed there while playing by my Lord, Sri Ram. So we may be wondering, what has God placed in the toys of ashes? When you turn a key in a toy of a child, then the toy begins to dance. But what has God put in this toy of ours? It is the five great gross elements, the ego, the intellect, the unmanifest, the 10 senses, the mind, and the 5 objects of sense. And that's what's in our body. Madhusudan Saraswati Ji defines avyakta, which is the unmanifest, as the maya, which is illusion, power of the Supreme Soul. God has placed this in the toy that is the body. Shankaracharya Ji says that the unmanifest is nature at the root. The Samkhya scriptures consider that maya, illusion, is truth and is independent, but the Vedic scriptures consider maya, again illusion, to be the energy of the Supreme Soul, to be a myth and to be inferior to God. In one of the Upanishads it is said, Mayantu prakrutim vidya mayi mantu maheshwara, which is, Maya is Prakriti and the owner of Maya is the Supreme Lord. So we've discussed these 10 senses, including the 5 senses of knowledge and the 5 senses of action. Shri Krishna then mentions the mind and says that he has also placed the mind in the body. The mind has a characteristic to stick onto something. It has an absorptive capacity. The mind constantly sticks onto somewhere or another, and it keeps on getting pulled from here to there. It holds onto something wherever it goes. There are 2 main places where the mind goes and sticks onto. The first is the field of objects, and the second is the field of emotions. And this is true because our minds are dragged by both emotions and objects. Either it will become involved in objects or it will become involved in emotions, but it is in our hands whether we choose the mind to stick on either of these 2 things. The mind is not just there to hang on. It needs something to hang on to, and therefore it has hangers which it uses to stick onto various objects or emotions. But we have to decide if we want to make our mind involved in either objects or in emotions. The majority of people's minds have the characteristic that are like water. Water only goes where there is a hole. In the same way, the mind often goes in a downwards direction, unfortunately. And there are 2 types of emotions, positive and negative. Therefore, right at the top come the positive emotions, and then come the negative emotions. And then come the objects. So if you look at the majority of people, then their minds are stuck onto objects. We live in a materialistic world. If they go a little bit above objects and onto the level of emotions, then after being freed from objects, it is the characteristic of the mind to become stuck in negative emotions. There are very few people out there who make those efforts for their minds to become involved in positive emotions. It's a subject worth talking about because frequently, whilst we're in discourses, for example, I'm guilty of this, we'll start to think of food at the end of the discourses. Our minds are not able to focus on something. It will begin to think about other topics. Again, we wonder what these emotions are, or what these objects are. It's written in our scriptures, and Western psychologists also say this. There are certain types of emotions that the mind sticks onto, and it's quite an interesting topic. There's been much written about this. The lower the thing is, then the quicker the mind will start to become stuck on that thing. It's very easy to make your mind stuck on objects. We're all living in a society where about 99 out of 100 people are stuck in objects. And by saying that people are stuck in objects, I mean that their mind are literally stuck because they have a forced attraction towards them. You're always thinking, I want to buy this, I want to get this, I want to have this. But why is this? There is a reason. We say this because once the mind is stuck on it, the mind becomes involved in it. Once it becomes involved in it, it ties a relation with it. If you were to talk about this at a higher level, then the mind ties enough relations with objects and with also emotions. There are two things that the mind can tie a relation with, and in Vedanta says, Dvitiya Dvei Bhayam. And this translates as, all the fears in this world are as a result of dualities. All the problems that there are in this world are as a result of dualities. All difficulties arise as a result of dualities, and the same thing that we have discussed with our mind is that our mind is tied between both things, the material objects or emotions. Difficulties will come because our mind is not able to control this. Once our mind doesn't really get a certain type of peace apart from when we finally have that object. What is the peace in this? If you tie a relation with a person or if you tie a relation with emotions, then there is a fear. We may wonder that if we tie a relation with the person, that perhaps there's a fear that this relation may break. If you tie a relation today, then perhaps tomorrow it will break. If a person is yours today, then tomorrow he may no longer be yours. This is a possibility. There is always a fear in objects. Once an object becomes yours, then it will remain yours. A person has his own opinion. Whichever person you tie a relation with, that person will have his own opinion, and you will have to accept it. For 6 days a week, from Monday to Saturday, a wife may make potato curry that her husband likes, but if one Sunday the wife says that she likes aubergines, and therefore she will make aubergines, then the hospitals have to say that fine, go and make it. At some time or another, you have to give the other person some importance, otherwise the relationship will not last, and a person is a symbol of emotions. This is because when there are emotions, there are two types of emotions that can never be the same. We have one emotion and we have the other person that has another emotion. There's always a conflict in emotions, but there can never be a conflict in objects. Where there are objects, there is no conflict. So if you have a watch, then there is no objects. It's a very easy object to fall in love with. The reason for this is that you know that it is your watch and that it can't become someone else's. It has no emotions of its own, and you can use it in any way that you want. Wealth, in the end, is actually an object. A person falls in love with money. Why is this? Why do 99 out of 100 people in society tie such a strong relationship with money? The reason for this is that money is a matter and money is an object. It stays in your pocket and there are no difficulties because of it. You have a total right over it at that time. If you have a 100 rupees note in your pocket, then you can use it the way that you want. If you wish to go to the hotel, then you can go to the hotel. If you wish to eat food with it, you can eat food with it. The money will never tell you where to go or not to go. The conscious may tell you that something is the right route and something is the wrong route, but money will never do this to you. If you wish to give your 100 rupee note to a beggar, then you can also give it to a beggar. The 100 rupee note will never say no to you. The person sitting next to you may ask what you're doing and say, why are you giving away 100 rupees? But the 100 rupee note will never be able to respond. Do you wish to give a donation to an organisation? Yes, go and do it. Do you wish to make wrong use of money? Yes, you can go and do it. This object is matter. Objects will never create opposition, and therefore it's a characteristic of people that wherever they tie a relationship, they always try to prove their possessiveness in this relationship. And this, of course, exists in emotions, and it's an inner wish of human beings. That's why it's very easy. 99 people out of 100 tie relationships with objects. The mind becomes involved in objects and in material enjoyments. Secondly, one should be careful that when the mind becomes involved in objects, then the power of the soul is spent away. The inner power is being used, and it's being reduced. The worldly pleasures are not enjoyed by us, but we were enjoyed by them. Penances were not completed, but we were completed. Time did not pass, but we passed. Our thirst did not get quenched, but we got quenched. And this helps to explain our interaction with material pleasures, because at the time of enjoying material pleasures, the power of the soul gets used. And then what? One should involve their mind in emotions. At the same time, it's not as if our scriptures have completely rejected objects. The scriptures of India are so balanced that they have studied a lot of human psychology. Objects may break a person, but at the same time, we cannot go without objects. In medieval times, a time came when a lot of criticism came towards objects and materialism. I often say that my mind is not prepared to believe it, but I've read somewhere that there was a saint, nor Surdas but another saint, became a youth at the age of 18 or 19, and saw a beautiful woman. A desire arose within him, and when he went home, he then thought, "But what happened there? Upon seeing a beautiful woman, a desire arose in my mind." And he got tools, and he cut out both his eyes. He then thought, "The eyes with which this can be seen, I do not want these eyes." But if we think about it intellectually, such a person cannot be called a saint. This is a sadist mentality. Not even a sadist mentality, but a masochistic mentality where one harms themselves. This is an attitude of self-destruction. The Indian scriptures, and in particular Sri Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita and the rishis of the Upanishads, are very, very balanced personalities. They say it is true that it's a reality that from material objects, the power of a person's soul becomes used up. But at the same time, we cannot go without material objects. We need to live. There must be one Mahavir out of 100,000 that will leave everything and go. There must be one Buddha, one Siddhartha Gautama out of every 100,000 who will leave everything and go and become a completely non-attached person. Vitarag, non-attachment, is a work of the Bhagavad Gita, and it is said, "Delivered from passion, fear and anger, absorbed in me, taking refuge in me." This is Sri Krishna talking about this. There must be somebody like that. But for an ordinary person, it won't work if somebody tells them that they should leave material objects. This is because we need a bed to sleep, we need a phone to phone our friends, to speak to our family. But we can't leave material objects because we cannot leave something if we are told that it's wrong, because dualities will arise in our mind, and we will see this in society today. There is a pull holding on to objects on our insides, and on the outside people will say, "Well, this means nothing to me." But of course it means something to you, you need it. A person may have made a very big bungalow, and when we go in to meet them, we tell them that their bungalow is very beautiful, and they say, "Well, this is nothing, it's just a simple village house." But it's not a village house, it's a 500-foot bungalow. And if it's a village house, then you can get out of it. No, the person wants it, and on the inside they want it, but on the outside they're saying, "This is useless to me, and I have done it for my children." This is what you call a Jekyll and Hyde personality. According to psychology, this is a schizophrenic person. On the inside, he is one thing, and on the outside, he is showing something else. Dharma teaches us to never have dualities. The scriptures know that one cannot go without enjoying material objects, and they also know that the material objects do damage a person. And then we may wonder, well, what should we do? The scriptures have shown that the middle path is the one to follow, and that's the one where one should exercise control. And this is what is called a brahmacharya, which sometimes is defined as celibacy. It's a person who lives within his limits. The mind gets a wish to go after material objects, and this is fine. One should tell the mind to go there, but then only within limits. The root is there to stop the mind from being involved with objects. Secondly, one should involve their mind in emotions. When the mind becomes involved in particular with positive emotions, then one's inner strength is increased. With objects, one's inner strength is depleted, and with positive emotions, one's inner strength increases. There are 14 types of emotions, both negative and positive. There's been a very great thinker by the name of MacDougall, and he has gone on to describe these. These are also described in our scriptures. We may ask what these are. The first is prem, which is love. The second is kam, which is lust. The third is krodh, which is anger. The fourth is udveg, which is disgust. The fifth is vishad, despondency. The sixth is kutuhal, inquisitiveness. The seventh is hinata, which is negative self-image. The eighth is sanpata, which is positive self-image. The ninth is ashcharya, wonder. The 10th is rasasvad, which is enjoyment of taste. The 11th is ekakitva, which is loneliness or aloneness. The 12th is sarjan amakta, creativity. The 13th is malikibhav, which is ownership. And the 14th is anand, which is sense of bliss. The first is love. MacDougall calls this tender emotions. You should always put your mind in love. You should always involve your mind in love. This is a positive emotion. The negative emotion of this is lust, which is the second emotion, kam. If your mind becomes involved in lust, then love is needed to take this from the negative into a positive. Love is nothing but the development of lust. Love is the advancement of lust. This is because the lust is only in relation to the body, whereas love has a relationship with the mind, and this is the difference. Therefore, the person goes on to a higher level. The third is anger. This is also a negative emotion. The fourth is disgust, which is again a negative emotion. You will see that the mind is playing in either one of these qualities listed above, and there is for it to play anywhere else. The fifth is distress or despondency. A person has fallen in sadness and sorrows. A person will feel defeated, tired, and depressed in the mind. And this is called distress or despondency. The first chapter of the Gita is called Arjun Vishad Yog, the hesitation and despondency of Arjun. In the first chapter of the Gita, Arjun's mind became hesitant and despondent. The sixth is inquisitiveness. Inquisitive nature is an emotion of the mind, but it's a positive emotion. Therefore, you will never see a child depressed. He's always curious. The question he always asks is why. Have you ever seen a small child in worry? No. The reason for this is because the child is constantly inquisitive. The child has an inquisitive nature for each and everything in the world, and even for the smallest of things. He will always say, why is this like this? Why is this like that? Why are the leaves green? Why is the ocean filled with water? Where did the water come from? This child is inquisitive. And this is a beautiful thing. From inquisitiveness, the doors of wisdom will open. The seventh emotion is a negative self-feeling, the feeling that I am nothing, I have nothing in me, I am useless. Our life is like a shadow of the light. We must have committed so many sins, and this is why we have come into this world. This world is a big jailhouse. This is a very negative self-image. These are negative emotions. This is considered to be inferiority and what we now know as the inferiority complex. The eighth emotion is positive self-image or positive self-emotion. The rishis of the Vedas say, Shunvanto Vishve Amrutasya Upraha. We are the descendants of nectar, so how can we not have a positive self-image? We must. The rishis of the Vedas also say, Ayam me hasto Bhagwan, ayam me Bhagavataraha. This hand of mine is God. In fact, my hand is even greater than God, because through the actions I would do with his hands, then the consequence is that I will attain the Supreme Soul. This is a positive feeling. One will think, God has given me so many powers before sending me here. God has given me such a beautiful body. I often say during my discourses that people will cry 3 times a day and say, I am a stupid person with wrong wishes. But if another person calls them stupid, then we will call them, if another person calls us stupid, then we will hit them with our shoes. But a person himself does this and sits in front of the idol of God and says 3 times, oh, I'm a stupid person, I have such wrong wishes. If a person has been constantly saying this for 50 years, then even if he is not stupid, he will become stupid. This is what will happen through auto-suggestion. Therefore, we must control the mind. The mind is such a powerful thing. If nothing is happening, and he closes his eyes and he says for 10 minutes, my head is hurting, then the mind will tell the person that the head is hurting. And of course the head will hurt. And likewise, if a person has been saying for 50 years, I am stupid, then will he not become stupid? And on top of this, he is saying this while sitting in front of God and with faith. Now, who said this? There is no need to say I'm stupid, but so much rubbish has come in religions in the last 500 to 700 years of self-pity and self-hatred. The more a person pities himself and the more such a person hates himself, the more a person will begin to say, wow, what a great person he is. This is what he speaks about in each and every person. He says that I am the dust off the feet of all of you. He knows in his mind who he is. There is no need for this. One should have positive self-emotion. One should have a positive feeling that God has given me a beautiful body, a beautiful mind. The Supreme Soul has given me a beautiful intellect. And only in this way will the person be able to go in the direction of the Supreme Soul. I once read about an event in history. Guruji is speaking about this when he read an event in history when he was very young, and he always remembers it. And it was when Alexander the Great came to attack India. At that time, Punjab in the north was governed by Puru, who is known as Porus to those studying English literature, but his actual name was Puru. This person, Puru, fought with great valour in order to try and defend India, but he was defeated. And when he was defeated, the Greek soldiers tied up Puru and brought him in front of Alexander. Alexander had received the news that this person had fought in a very tough way. And this is because when the other small kings heard that Alexander had come in order to try and conquer the world, and that he had come from Greece and he had won so much time and time again, they all immediately surrendered, thinking that there was no benefit in having a war. Puru did not have so much strength, but he was not willing to accept surrender. We must be like this. He fought, and Alexander found this strange, that this person was so ready to fight against him. He fought against him, and Puru lost, and when he was brought in front of Alexander, all tied up, Alexander asked him, "Well, how must I behave with you?" At that time, Porus gave a very good answer and said, "As befits me, like a king." Puru was thinking that even if I am defeated, I am a king, I am a warrior, and battle is my duty. Puru was thinking that even if I am defeated, I am a king, I am a warrior, and if I go to battle, then I will win 50% of the time, and I will lose 50% of the time. Just because I lost does not mean that I am not a king anymore. And this is why he replied, "As befits me, like a king." Alexander was so happy that upon hearing his answer, he must have seen this radiance, the splendour, and the feeling of self-esteem in his eyes, that Alexander gave Puru his kingdom back, and he told him that you look after your kingdom. And why did this come? If Puru had fallen at his feet and said, "If you keep me alive, then that will be enough," then he would have been put into jail. But Puru said, "No, I am the king, and so you behave with me like I am a king." Alexander was great, and thought that what befits the king, the throne befits the king, and therefore I should give the throne to he who befits the king, and to a person that has such high self-esteem. And in the same way, we must go to God, and when God asks us, "O devotee, how must I behave with you?" at that time we should even say to God, "God, just like our qualifications, I am your descendant and I am your son. You are my father, and so behave with me in this way, just like a father behaves with his son." We get the word in English Pyrrhic victory from this example, and this is a fundamental example that we should use in our lives. In the 11th chapter of the Gita, Arjun said, "Piteva putrasya sakheva sakyu priya priyayaha hasi deva sorim." And this is translated as, "You, O God, should bear with me as a father to his son, as a friend to his friend, as a lover to his beloved." You should tell God, therefore, to behave with you in this way, just like a father behaves towards his son, just like a friend behaves towards his friend, and just as a lover behaves towards his beloved. You should tell God to behave with you in this way. This is because you have seen God in this relation, in this way. Other people say to God, "Oh God, do not kill me, I have committed many sins." To such people, God says that you will get the punishment. Remember the words, as Puru said, "As befits me, like a king." This positive emotion is fundamental. It's very necessary in our lives. When we speak about positive emotions, we completely lose track of time, because in today's religion, the biggest difficulty of all is that it's destroying someone's self-esteem. This is because so-called religious people with vested interests are like this. The reason for this is that people think, if this person becomes awake and positive and realized, then our vested interests will not last. A person who has turned religion into a business, this person can't bear it when someone stands up and has faith in himself. It's only when the other person is bowing down that something keeps falling into this business pot. If this person gets up, then things will stop falling into the business pot. They keep trying to press on people, saying, "You are individuals and you are servants. We don't live in the material world, and we have come here to help you." Only then does their business last. Otherwise, how can their business last? When an agent is sitting here, then the agent never likes it when the person has direct contact with another party. Even when you go out to sell a simple flat and you meet an agent, and the agent finds out that you're contacting another party directly, the agent does not like it, and there is havoc. This is why they don't even show it. They say, "You decide first whether you want to buy it, and only then can we sit down." Otherwise, the agency of the agent will go out of business. The dependency on the agent would otherwise go away. And it's not just about the business agents, but also people who have turned religion into a business. These two never will allow people to meet each other. But we can deduce from this that we must have a positive attitude. We must say, "Lord, I am yours." The 9th emotion is wonder. The more one's wonder increases, then the closer that person will go to the Supreme Soul. This is because God is nothing other than the greatest of all wonders. He is the greatest of all wonders. I'm saying this with the support of the Srimad Bhagavad. In the Bhagavad, the phrase used to describe Sri Krishna is Sarvascharya Mayo Achyutaha, which is, the Supreme Soul is the greatest wonder of all wonders. This is the emotion of wonder. If the emotion of wonder goes out of someone's life, then the person becomes matter and the person becomes a stone. If this happens, then there will be nothing like a heart left in the person. One should have wonder like a child. It's always scary to see someone who's extremely practical and has no wonder left in their heart. And when we say that we're scared towards them, we almost have a certain fear of them because they have no wonder at all. They say, well, that is fine and that is fine. No matter what you say, the person will have no wonder at all. He's not interested in nature, not interested in people, not even interested in divine qualities, or in wisdom, or in anything else. And whenever you tell him that someone is a great wise person, or very knowledgeable, he'll say, that's okay. He's like a stone. When you leave to travel for a day and point out that there's a beautiful sun, he'll say, really? Yeah, it's okay. There's no charm in such a person's life. We must have this charm, we must have this wonder. The 10th emotion is enjoyment of a taste. One enjoys the taste of something, and this is a great emotion. The 11th emotion is loneliness or aloneness. You can interpret this negatively or positively. One is in solitude. Loneliness is a fault, but if we change loneliness into aloneness, then it becomes a quality. All in one is alone. The word alone can be split into the words all and one. All one is alone. There should be some time in one's life where a person is alone, and despite being alone, the person is neither a hermit nor is he dry. Despite being alone, he is abounding and he is abundant. The 12th emotion is creativity. One should even involve their mind in this. Psychologists even say that you should do some activity or the other where you are creative and where your own creativity becomes manifest. Then no matter what you're doing, whether it's writing a poem, painting a painting, singing a song, or doing the most ordinary of activities such as knitting a sweater, then you are using your creativity. As long as your life is not becoming mechanical, then there is creativity. Another example would be when you are doing very nice embroidery. At the beginning, you have to read a book in order to learn how to do it, but eventually you put the books aside and you'll say, I'll begin my own way, I'll learn myself. This is creativity. One must involve their mind in creativity. The 13th emotion that we discussed is the feeling of ownership. This is an emotion of the mind. This is the sense of possession and the feeling of ownership. The mind likes this because this is the sense of possession. And the 14th emotion is the sense of this bliss. MacDougall uses the word amusement, but I like to use the phrase the sense of bliss. One should keep their mind permanently occupied in bliss. Therefore, Sri Krishna spoke about the 10 senses and then the mind. Sri Krishna spoke about the five objects of sense. The word gochar is used, and we should understand this word in Sanskrit. Go means cow. Gochar, jar means the place to move around. We've all heard of the word gochara. Gochar means a place where cows move around. It's where cows are moving around openly and eating whatever they like. This is a gochar. In this instance, Sri Krishna has used the word India gochar, and it is this which is the enjoyment of the Sanskrit language, where the word go can either mean cow, it can also mean senses. Therefore, if we look at it in the meaning of senses, then India gochar means places where the senses move around. Where do the senses eat, and where do the senses move around? And this is in objects. There are 5 objects of sense: words, touch, appearance, taste, and smell. The Supreme Soul has also put these in the statue of clay that is the body. The objects of sense are the last 5 of the 24 that we have seen in these verses. The senses go to move amongst the objects, and from this deformities are born. Remember that God has said in the 3rd verse that Tat Kshetram Yakchat Yadrakcha Yadvikari Yatashyachat. Hear briefly from me what the field is, of what nature, what its modifications are. Shri Krishna said that he would describe the field along with its deformities. What do the deformities of the 5 senses come from? They come from objects. When the senses go to move amongst the objects and go to feed on the objects, then deformities come from that. There is a very nice event in Jesus Christ's life. A short time after the crucifixion of Christ came, Christ was reincarnated and had a rebirth. After he attained rebirth, Jesus went to his own hometown. People thought that Christ had been buried, and when they saw him, they thought, well, this is Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ was walking through the market in the town, and a man came and touched Christ's feet. It's not the culture of the West to touch people's feet, but according to Indian customs, he touched Christ's feet. He asked Christ if he recognized him, and Christ said that he did not, and he asked the man to explain his identity. The man said, I was blind. You put your hand in front of my eyes, and you made me capable of seeing again. Christ asked him where he was going, and he said that he was going to see prostitutes dance. And Christ says, is this the reason for which I gave you your eyes back? The man said, sorry, Christ. You gave me my eyes back, but you did not teach me what to look at with these eyes. Another man came to touch Christ's feet. Christ also told him that he did not recognize him and also asked him to explain his identity. The man said, "I was unable to walk, but you made me walk again." And again, Jesus Christ asked him, "Where are you going?" And he asked him why. Jesus Christ asked him why he had given him his feet back. The man said, "I am going to an inn to drink alcohol. You gave me back my legs, but you did not show me which direction to walk in." Many such people came, and Jesus thought, "Well, is this the consequence for which all this healing I have done?" A third man came and touched Christ's feet and asked whether Christ knew who he was, and Jesus said, "No. I recognize many people, but none of them are worth recognizing now." The man said, "No. I was extremely ill. I had a disease and I was about to die. Everybody had given up hope for me, including people in my family, the doctor, and everyone else around me. I was going to die. At that time you came and you saved me from the jaws of death. Jesus, you gave me a new life." And Jesus said, "Why? Well, where are you going now?" And he said, "I'm going to commit suicide." And Jesus became confused and asked, "Why is this the case?" The person said, "It's because you didn't give me guidance in life or demonstrate to me how to use my life, nor did you show me how to face life." This example is worth understanding a lot. What I mean to say right now is that the senses always moved in the field of the objects of sense. If one has eyes but doesn't know what to see with his eyes, then the deformities will enter into a person's life. A person has feet, and a person has all 10 senses, but where do they send these senses? The ears like to listen, but what should we listen to? If a person doesn't know this, then deformities will enter a person's life. Deformities will enter the appearance where one sees through the eyes. Again, the same thing will happen through the mouth, via speech. And that's why Sri Krishna uses the phrase Indriya Gochar, meaning places where the senses move around. In the 5th verse, Sri Krishna will speak about the deformities of the kshetra, the field. The 24 things that were described in the 5th verse are the 5 great gross elements, the ego, the intellect, the avyakta, the 10 senses, the mind, and the 5 objects of sense, word, touch, appearance, taste, and smell. These are the 24 things. In the 6th verse, Sri Krishna will describe the 7 deformities. Thank you very much. That's the end of this class.